So, of course, we are getting into the introduction of the real estate math, and I know it's nobody's favorite, and it is just that, an introduction. Please understand that as time goes on, the math will get progressively worse. None of it is exceptionally hard. There's like one type of math, and I'm just like, take the L. It's just not even worth teaching it to most people. I've just noticed over the years, and no offense to anybody in particular, it's just a ridiculous amount of math. So there is some where, folks, and this is where I'll remind you too, that seven total math questions on the national exam. It is exceptionally possible to pass the exam with not getting a single math question right. I wouldn't strive for that, but it is possible, technically speaking. So let me expand on this T-bar. I gave you an introduction of what it is, right? It's this visual representation of how to use linear equations. If you don't remember linear equations, if the word algebra makes you want to vomit in your mouth. And so anytime that you're dealing with, individual pieces of an equation, this just helps you understand that you put the whole, the rate, the part. And so if you only have two pieces of data, you can kind of know where to plug them in and when to divide and when to multiply. A linear equation will always do that too. It's just, a visual representation of it. So for example, folks, if we were talking about area calculations, I'm going to teach this yet again later, but just so you understand what the formula for calculating area of something is length times width, right? Or at least for a or like a square or rectangle, length times width. And so if we said that a lot was, for example, had a total of 15,000 square feet and a width of 100 square feet. Well, folks, this is what I'm saying, that your brain works linearly. 100 feet times this unknown, we'll just say, well, I guess it already says width, length, equals 15,000. You see how this is the exact same thing. It's just this is a linear equation. This is a visual representation. You've got the width. You've got the square footage. Width times length would give you the square footage, but all you have to do is, okay, we'll divide by 100 on this side, and you got to do the same on the other side of the equation. So your length is like saying 15,000 divided by 100. And so in the T-bar, it's not necessarily a whole or a part, but one side times one side would equal this. But since you don't have that, you've got one side and the total. Because you've got the total, it'd be 15,000 divided by 100. It's the exact same thing between the linear equations and the T-bars. It's just some people are more comfortable with one over the other. So 15,000 square feet divided by 100 feet as the width would tell you your length is 150 feet. That's it. And the beautiful thing about math, for those of you who absolutely hate it, you can check your work. Go back and take 100 and multiply it by 150. You get 15,000. Yay, you got it right. Math can be checked. That's the beautiful thing about it. So let's get into the actual tax bill calculations, because this is like the introduction to math and T-bars, but let's get into the actual tax bill. Now here's the thing. I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I don't necessarily love the way that this looks initially. When we're dealing with tax bills, we very often look at the annual tax bill, but sometimes we ask to look at a monthly as well. So we could say, okay, well, how much would you owe per month? Could be a question. So you'd figure out the annual tax bill and you divide it by 12, right? The number of months in a year. And of course, we said in North Carolina, we base the tax bill on 100% of the assessed value, and we utilize the tax rate. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to work this as well. Now, folks, I'm showing you a couple of ways because I know not everybody's brains work the same. I'm going to tell you what I think is the best way, but if you can get the question right, I don't really care which way you do it. You're not going to hurt my feelings. This is not a show your work class. Get the right freaking answer, and I'm happy as a clam. This is what it comes down to. So let me show you a couple different pieces, a couple ways of breaking down. I told you North Carolina uses a per 100 rate. And so here's an example of what a per 100 rate looks like. Sometimes it would also be represented as like $1.67 with just a slash and 100. Okay, that is, well, that looks terrible from the mouse point of view, but there you go. So let me explain, and this is once again going to help you not need formulas. Let me explain what this is actually saying. Okay, if you look at this visual example, we're saying the assessed value is $120,000 for this property. It means the tax assessor said that was the assessed value. And the tax rate for this example is $1.67 per 100. Here's what that translates to. You owe the tax assessor $1.67 per $100 of assessed value. That's it. You owe the tax assessor $1.67 per $100 of assessed value. In other words, if you started counting to 120,000 in multiples of 100, every time you said 100, you owe them $1.67. 200, another $1.67. 300, another $1.67. Well, it would be absolutely ridiculous to try to count it that way. So what you do is, now, some of you may prefer this way. I'm going to tell you why this is not my favorite way, but just so you can understand it, first, follow this. If your assessed value is $120,000 and you owe $1.67 per $100 of assessed value, you just have to figure out how many times does 100 go into 120,000. So you divide it by 100. So it goes into it 1,200 times. And so in other words, you owe the tax assessor $1.67 1,200 times. That's multiplication. 1,200 times $1.67. Your tax bill is $2,004. Now listen, I know that some of y'all are not the most vocal people, but please understand when it comes to math, that if you don't tell me that you're confused as all get out, I can't help you. But if everybody's okay-ish so far, I will show you another way to do it. It only gets worse, Cheyenne. You're absolutely right.
What section of the slides in the group me are these in? Is it section 1 or 2?
I'm still in unit 1.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me show you how I prefer to do it, and then I'm going to explain why, okay? This, I took the assessed value and I divided by 100. And I said, okay, well, how many times does 100 go into it? And then we just multiplied that by your per 100 tax rate. Well, folks, if I said, how many times does 100 go into itself, what would you tell me? Yeah, 1. And so here's what I'm getting at. I initially took the assessed value and I divided by 100 to see how many times 100 goes into that. But what I could also do is, if you understand that this is a $1.67 per 100 rate, if you take your $1.67 and you divide it by 100, you have now converted your tax rate to a per dollar rate. In other words, you would owe the tax assessor 0.0167 cents per dollar of assessed value. And now that you know that, you can just take that rate and multiply it by the whole assessed value. You get the exact same thing. Why do I prefer it this way? Because if you think back to the T-bars, you cannot plug in a per 100 rate. That's two different things. This much per 100. If you convert it to a per dollar rate, it works out perfectly. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Bree, what I did was I took the $1.67, which is a per 100 rate, and then I divided it by 100, because 100 goes into itself one time. So what you're basically saying is, like, well, how many times does 100 go into 100? One time. That converts it to a per dollar rate. Now, if you don't want to use a calculator, you can also just move the decimal over twice. And that converts it to a per dollar rate. So now what I'm telling you is, converted to a per dollar rate, you owe the tax assessor 0.0167 cents per dollar of assessed value. So you can then multiply this by your total assessed value, and it maths out the same. You see that. This times your 120,000, same tax bill. And the reason why that's important, folks, think of the linear equation or the t-bar. Let's just use the t-bar because some of you seem to like that more. If I was to say you have a tax bill of $2,004 and you were had a tax rate of $1.67 per 100. If you take 2004 and divide down the T by $1.67, it does not equal the assessed value. You would have to multiply it by 100 in order to get back to the assessed value. That's extra steps. But watch what happens with the way that I told you to do it. If you always convert it to a per dollar rate, 0.0167, and then you plug it in. 2004 divided by 0.0167, you do not have to worry about changing things. I really could care less how you do it, but I'm telling you, if you get used to converting it to a per dollar rate and then doing the math, it works front ways, backwards, upside down, inside out beautifully. Just my opinion, but you do you, boo-boo. Whatever makes you feel more comfortable. So let's take this a step further. This is just another kind of visual here where you were seeing all the information. Now, I want you to realize something. This percentage sign really has no place here. The only reason that's in there is because students sometimes don't understand why you would divide by 100. Hitting the percent symbol divides by 100. I told you to do it because I explained why you do it. This is, yet again, a visual crutch. You don't need that as long as you understand what I just showed you. Your per 100 rate divided by 100 converts it to a per dollar rate. And then the math maths out beautifully. So let me give you one to try here. See if you're following along with me. If I had an annual tax bill of $2231.74 and the tax rate was $1 or $1.678 per 100, what is your assessed value? So this goes back to what I just showed you. If you convert it to a per dollar rate, the T-bar T's very well. Get a lot of some consistency in there. Folks, as I said, and as I pointed out why I prefer it the way that I do, if you were to just come in here and plug this in point blank period and attempt this, it doesn't work, right? You can't say 2231.74 divided by 1.678. That is not going to get you the answer. You would have to know to multiply by 100 at that point. So the easiest thing to do, as I told you, is always convert it to a per dollar rate. Well, you can even do it super simple without the calculator. I told you. Dividing by 100 is like saying move the decimal over 2 times. So now what you're really looking at is 2231.74 is the tax bill divided by the per dollar rate of 0.01678, or $133,000 of assessed value. And as I told you, math is great in the fact that you can check your work. If you like the other way better, check your work that way. This divided by 100 times the per 100 rate of 1.678 gives you the tax bill we started with. You can always check your work. Makes it a little bit easier, though, I'm telling you, when you convert it to a per dollar rate every single time. So the answer here is 133. Now let's do it the slightly easier way where we're just calculating the tax bill, okay? So here is the scenario. I'm going to say nothing. You see if you can solve it. Give you a few more moments. So let's work through it, folks. And understand that even those of you who are lost, it does get better. You got to get exposed to this stuff. The only way to get better at math is to do it over and over and over again. And it'll start to click at a certain point. I promise it will. So the assessed value of a property inside the city limits is $286,000. County taxes are 81 cents per 100 and city taxes are 72 cents per 100. Well, folks, I told you, bar none, you always have to pay county taxes. And because it is located inside the city, you are also paying city taxes. No need, though, to do the work twice. Just add them together. 81 cents per 100 plus 72 cents per 100. And so your tax rate is $1.53 per 100. Okay, well, I told you what I really like to do is I like to just divide by 100, and that converts it to a per dollar rate. Per dollar rate times your assessed value of $286,000. $4,375.80 is your tax bill.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would one of the answers, like to try to trick us, be rounded off or no?
No, they're never going to try. There's only one category that would trick you based on rounding, and you haven't learned it yet. So it will never be rounding. I would say just do typical rounding, right? 2 decimal places for most math, and you'll be fine. Now, I will introduce the math packet here in just a second, and it's based on 3 decimal places, but it will never come down to rounding except for one in very specific category. How are we feeling? Don't everybody shake your head. Some of y'all got it wrong. Talk to me if you don't understand what you did wrong. Don't just nod. This is a class. You're here to learn. Yeah, no, I got 7, but I'm fine. This is fine.
So, how often are we going to be going over this? Like, or is this the only night? Because I know probably by tomorrow night I'm not going to remember anything.
I'm going to show you how you can work on it by yourself, and then I will occasionally bring it back sometimes. It's not a lot, because at the end of the day, 7 questions is not worth a lot of class time over. Even though math is math, right? 7 questions is not worth a lot of class time. So we will get a lot of math exposure, and this stuff is really, more than anything, going to be used as a small piece of a bigger math question. Very seldom will you, no offense, folks, very seldom will you have a math question just this easy. This is typically one piece of the math question. Yeah, this is the bottom of the totem pole of the math. It's not that bad, but yeah, you get it. What you got, Lena?
So you said that on the test, it's only national side has the math, but we're learning the values based on North Carolina's per 100 and 100% assessed value, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be a different kind of in another lesson, I guess, when we learn like the national side of things.
Yeah, in like 2 slides.
How to do the okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Oh, it's coming, Lena. It's coming. Yeah. Yeah, it's an exposure thing, folks. So of course, let me show you a couple more things, and then I'll give you several more to practice. Here is everything kind of extrapolated out as we just did it. Okay, nice and pretty. Let me give you another one to attempt. And it's okay for those of you who are still like, I don't know how to do it. It's fine. You can play around with it, or you can wait for me to explain it. Some people are getting it. And I'm going to show you, like I said, how to get additional exposure and practice. But let me give you another one to attempt here. Just take your time. See if you can get it. If you can, great. If you can't, okay. We're going to go over it. So here's the next one. Parker, is that your way of saying you're going to take the L? That's what that was?
Yeah, I had something else in the chat box from the last question.
Oh, okay. I'm like, dang, Parker, tell me you're not going to try it without telling me you're not going to try it. Like, just put like 1 million in there, right? 4,675,000. I'm like, I don't think that's it. By the way, folks, let me remind you of something too. When we're dealing with math, and I know Parker's was an accident, common sense will help you out. So if we're talking about a tax bill for something that's $246,000 and somehow your math says, oh, the tax bill is going to be $80,000 a year. No, it's not. Not for a property that costs $246,000. So sometimes, you know, some things will help you out. I just saw that astronomical number there. I'm like, dang, Parker. Genesis says, look, you check your answer on the, and of course, your answer is none of the answer choices. Yeah, that's bad when it's none of the answer choices. That's not good. I'm not going to say that there's no such thing as typos. Sometimes they do happen, but typically. Give it just another moment, and then we'll work through it. So, let's talk about this one, folks. And this is really a multifaceted learning point because while some of you are not necessarily comfortable with this math yet, and some of you are, yeah, there you go, Brad, you just caught it. This is a multifaceted learning point. I intentionally said nothing to you about this question. Why? Because every detail matters in a test question, and you've got to start training your brain right here and right now to read the question in its entirety and make sure you know what you are answering before you attempt to tackle anything. Otherwise, you are going to screw yourself over. Case in point, if you look on this, it is outside the city, which means we are going to ignore the city taxes and only charge you the county. And the other big thing is I don't want the annual tax bill. I want the monthly. So if you gave me the annual, you got it wrong. But that's okay. Learn now in the comfort of the classroom to read the entirety of the question, and you'll like me better on the test, right? It's okay to hate me now as long as you like me on the test. That's kind of the point, right? I kind of sneak that in there. So if we're doing the math, folks, the assessed value is $246. It's outside the city limit, so we're only doing county taxes. That means your tax rate is 89 cents per 100. Of course, you can divide that by 100 and convert it to a per dollar rate. Per dollar rate times your assessed value of $246,000 gives you an annual tax bill of $2189.40. But I wanted the monthly. Divide by 12 months in a year. What you got, Brooks?
So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how diabolical are the people who came up with this test? Are they gonna throw answers that they know are wrong but are right if you do the math wrong?
2189.40 would have been an answer choice. And other answer choices typically include the most common mistakes that students make. Those people are called psychometricians who evaluate and make tests more difficult and or evaluate the difficulty. And Brooks will say emphasis on the psycho.
No, I was going to call him an asshole.
Well, I mean, you know, if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, right? Maybe. Yeah. Maybe. So, let me introduce a couple more things here, and then I'm going to show you how you can practice this math. Yeah, there is an exam prep book that has practice sample questions. Before we go that route, I'm going to show you already have one as well. So here's just everything we just worked out. Now, here's where Lena was getting at, folks. North Carolina, we use a per 100 rate. Some other states will use what is called a mill rate. Don't panic. A mill rate is just per 1,000. That's the only difference. even though it's called mills, it's per 1,000. So if I was to say the real property tax rate is 5 mills, what that is stating is you owe the tax assessor $5 per $1,000 of assessed value. Okay, well, let's play a fun game here, folks. If you took 100 and divided by 100 to get 1, what would you divide 1,000 by to get 1? A 1,000. And so what I'm telling you is, if you want to convert the mill rate easily into the dollar rate as well, you would take the 5 mills and divide it by 1,000. And this has now been converted to a per dollar rate just like the other. Let's play another fun game. What would you multiply 1 by to get 100? 100. So now that I've found the per dollar rate, I could multiply this per dollar rate by 100, and now I've converted it into a per 100 rate. What would I multiply 100 by on a calculator to get 1,000? Just need one more zero. There you go, 10. So now that I've got this per 100 rate, I could multiply it by 10, and I'm back up to my mill rate. Folks, this is math they will ask you to do, which is why I'm teaching you how to convert it. They will say, what is 7 mills as a per 100 rate? Okay, well, if you're taking 1,000 to 100, you divide by 10. If you're taking 100 to 1,000, you multiply by 10. If you're taking 1,000 to 1, you divide by 1,000. If you're taking 1 to 100, you multiply by 100. I know this sounds like a lot, but it's really just asking yourself, well, what would I do to this in a calculator to change it from this to that? It is no different fundamentally in practice. It's just a mill rate is per 1,000, whereas a North Carolina, we use a per 100. But it's easy to convert it back and forth. Now, this is just showing you, once again, in the T-bar. I don't necessarily love the visual of the T-bar here because it just seems convoluted. But the mill rate expressed as a per 100 rate, I told you, divide by 10. Because 1,000 in a calculator divided by 10 is 100. So 17 mills divided by 10 converted it to a per 100 rate. And then yet again, this per 100 rate can be divided by 100 to convert it to a per dollar rate. And then your per dollar rate can be multiplied by 1,000 to convert it back to a mill rate. This way, that way, this way, that way. Let me give you one more practice question in the slides, and I'm going to show you where to practice this day in and day out. I'm not going to say anything. Do it to it. Just another moment, we'll go over it. So, let's talk about this, folks. I told you in the last one, it is very important to make sure you read the question and you analyze it. And for multiple reasons. You got to know what you're actually answering. You got to know what you need and what you don't need. So the question is, what is the monthly tax bill for a property which recently sold for $452 with an assessed value of $427 in Nashville, where the total tax rate is $1.16 per 100? Now, of course, all you have is what you have. So the only tax rate you have is $1.16. This is not going to be based on in the city, outside the city, none of that. But first thing you need to catch, monthly. Some of you still miss that. You've got to train your brain to catch all the words. Second thing you should catch, it sold for $452. Taxes are not based on the market price, so you can ignore that. You are basing it off of your assessed value. And now it's just a run-of-the-mill math problem. So you've got your $1.16 per 100. Personally, I told you I like to just divide it by 100 and convert it to the per dollar rate. Per dollar rate times your assessed value of $427,000 gives us our annual tax bill, but we are looking for the monthly yet again divided by 12. 412.76 or 77 depending on how you round it. How are we feeling? Some these, some these, some these, some these, some. Where's the bottle of tequilas? I got it. Yep.
For some reason, I think it'll be even harder.
You mean it's going to get harder?
Yeah, and especially in the test, right?
Oh, yeah. But it's okay, because this is just your introduction to it. Like, I mean, seriously, it will get better. Some of you who are, like, stressing right now, it will get better. Like, later on, you're going to be like, oh, this math is nothing. I promise you will. Now, there's, like I said, there's more difficult math, but this is not going to stress you out as you get exposed to it a little bit more. What you got, Brooks?
So, one thing that tripped me up, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, initially, why would the monthly tax bill or just the tax bill be based off the assessed value and not the sale value? Or do you know that answer? I'm just asking.
No. Because I literally told you it is based off the assessed value. Remember the tax assessor. Remember you asked me about market value and market price, and so we had that conversation. The tax assessor has their own appraiser. And this goes back to why there is a difference between what you can sell your property for and what the tax value is. They do their own appraisal. They're not in North Carolina, and this will be a segue. There you go, Brad. This is a segue into another concept that we'll wrap up the day with. But in North Carolina, the tax bill is always based on the assessed value. It's called a tax assessor. The tax assessor tells you what they think your property is worth in that octennial reappraisal, and yet that tax rate is going off of your assessed value. And that's why I told you earlier, you got to be very careful because this is an easy one. We could say, Brooks, a home was purchased for $452, the assessed value is $427, the loan amount is $355, and give you other metrics. And you've got to know that when there is an assessed value, that is what you're going to base your taxes off for these. Always. Always, always, always. It's not a sales tax. It's an annual real property tax. Right? So we're not basing it off the sales price. You pay these every year. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just got a little confused because for some reason in my brain it just clicked that you're paying taxes off of what you paid for the house, not the assessed value.
You're not paying taxes off what you paid for the house. You're paying taxes off what the government thinks your house is worth. What they tell you it's worth. So, for example, if I bought a house for $500,000, but the tax assessor says my house is only worth $400,000, I'm paying taxes on $400,000, not what I paid for it. It's not a sales tax. It's a tax for the government based on what they assess your value to be. Just like your car, right, Brooks? When you, like, if you got a truck, a car, whatever, they send you a bill. They say, here's what we think your car is worth, and here's your bill based on it. right? It's based on what they think it's worth. That's called assessed value. That ad valorem word, what we think it's worth. Yeah. Now,
All right, cool.
now to your point, Brooks, I'm glad you said that because here's the segue though. In North Carolina, it's always the assessed value. Here's the thing. Some states do base it off of sales price. And that's the confusing piece. So let me introduce what's called an equalization factor, folks. If we were dealing with, well, better yet, let me show you some resources to help, okay? If you look at your online learning management system and you go down, there is a whole math section, real estate math. And if you look in there, there is what's called a math packet. It is a downloadable PDF in there. And it has every type of math you could possibly see on the test. It has the formulas for them, and it has practice questions. There is also an answer key at the end of it. Now, there's like a couple of typos in the answer key that I still haven't fixed for, not the answer, but for the explanation of the answer. I'll get around to it. If you ever see something weird, ask me and I'll confirm it. But so, for example, right now, here's the tax calculation math that we were just doing, and you got some practice problems that you can do. But let me show you what I was just trying to introduce. This right here. Some states will do it based off of market value, but then they will typically use something called an equalization factor. So they're not going to tell you what they think their property is worth. They're going to be like, oh, well, your house value is $50,000, and we're going to charge you taxes based on 60% of that. So in some municipalities, they'll take the last sales price and they'll just scale it up or down, and that's called an equalization factor. So in this example, they're not charging you based on 100% of that market value. You would say $50,000 times 60%, that's the amount you're being taxed on. It's called an equalization factor. But in North Carolina, it is always 100% of the assessed value. So on the test, if you see assessed value for tax questions, use that. It would only be if we say the taxes are based off 110%, 20%, whatever, something like that. So this is a prime example of the different things you're going to see, right? These are what we were just doing. Annual tax bills, monthly tax bills. There's mill rates ones. There's equalization factor ones. And then, of course, it gets into other concepts. Now, one other thing I'll show you, just for some of you struggling, if you go back here, I've worked out the first main sections of that math packet, and there's actual videos for it. So, for example, the tax calculations that are on that sheet, there's videos of me working through them. 100 goes into itself one time. And so you can see it and rewatch it and repractice it and check your work. It's in there. It's available. It's a resource just to help you out. So those of you who are struggling with it, work through them, then watch the explanation. And as I said, some of the main ones that you're going to struggle with in the beginning are already in there. Tax prorations, tax calculations, area calculations. So you can see it worked out in that math packet, but that math packet is there as a resource for you to help you practice. Raphael, you had your hand up, right?
Yeah. You mentioned something, and then I just want to make sure I got it right. On the test, there will only be, they will be asking the value. I mean, you will only calculate the value, the assessed value, not the actual whatever the other thing was, right?
Yeah, not purchase price.
No purchase price. Okay.
Yeah, not purchase price, not loan amount. And so you've got to kind of keep these things straight. So, I mean, once again, folks, don't ever put anything in the question that's not there. So if you look at this math packet, this one just says market value and 60% of that market value. It does not say, right, anything for the assessed value. The assessed value is 60% of the market value. So you can't make that mistake. It's telling you what to base it off of. If I have a question that says sold for this, appraised for this, assessed value of this, and it's saying what is the tax bill at a per 100 rate, you're going to grab that assessed value. Always default to assessed value for the taxes unless there isn't one and or they suggest that it's not what it's based on. It goes back to what I told you. Don't ever think you're smarter than the question. All you have is what you have. Do what they say, and you'll be fine.
Okay, thanks. Always the assessed value.
Just for funsies, because we haven't practiced one yet, try number 3 for me. It's a mill one. Also, Raphael, I got 2 of you in here, but I don't say either one of you.
Computer actually ran out of battery.
Oh, there you go. Was it at Olive Garden, Jack? Is that where it was? Thinking about pasta. All mills is a per 1,000 rate. That's it. That's it. So what this is stating is you owe the tax assessor $8.90 per 1,000 of assessed value. That's it. Yep, that's it. You owe $8.90 to the tax assessor per $1,000 of assessed value. And so if you take that rate and divide it by 1,000, you've now converted it to a per dollar rate just like the others. And you can just multiply it by the assessed value. Give you just another moment, and we will go over it. So, property is assessed at $64,410. The county tax rate is 8.9 mils per. It's not per dollar. That's kind of a redundant thing. And the 8.9 mils is all it's going to say on the test. What would be the amount of the annual tax bill and what would be the monthly? Of course, this is a 2-part answer. You're never going to have one of those. At least it's not multiple choice in some way, shape, or form. But just like anything else, like with the per 100 rate, if you take your 8.9 mils, which is per 1,000, and you divide it by 1,000, you have now converted it to a per dollar rate, just like we were doing before, just with different mils versus per 100. Multiply it by your assessed value of $64,410, and your annual tax bill is $573.25 divided by 12 gives you a monthly of $47.77. As I said, there is practice problems all throughout here. There is, of course, other resources out there with these practice. There's the videos. There's things. The biggest thing is just practicing math, folks. If you just kind of see it again and get exposed to it and practice it, it does start to click. It's just a very unfamiliar thing. And most adult learners haven't done math like this in a very long time. They're used to addition, subtraction, and they're not thinking about tax bills or rates or conversions or anything like that. So it's a little bit more of an abstract concept, but we got plenty of weeks left. The more we do the math, the more it will start to click. But especially if you struggle with it, practice, 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 practice. And don't be afraid to ask questions. But I mean, I can teach it about 10 million different ways. Math doesn't scare me, but I don't know to teach it a different way if you don't tell me that you're not getting it. Or I can't explain it if you don't tell me what you're not getting.